How do you forgive your father? How do you move on even from past wounds of your childhood? How do you stay connected to yourself, forgive, and ultimately find peace? Today's topic is about how to heal the father wound. And personally, since 5 years, I have started healing the father wound. And today I'm going to share with you what I have been integrating and also what I'm still struggling with, because there's actually no other relationship that has challenged me more and also grown me more than the connection or the lack thereof to my father. And if you're new here, my name is Jana, and together with my husband Albert, we provide a beautiful sacred space for retreats for individuals just like you, with our beautiful, beautiful team at Light Connect. So, if you haven't seen the last video, in the last video I talked about how to indicate if you have a father wound. Let's recap for a little bit. So a father wound can be any wound you have with a masculine energy in your life, and most of the time it's our father figure. And it can be physically, that he was absent physically or emotionally, or it can be neglect, abuse, or even divorce. And for me, it was emotional neglect, and also my parents divorced when I was 13, and they also separated when I was 2. And I explained in the last video that I started therapy because in 2020, I realized that I had some patterns, reoccurring patterns, and they were all related to men. And that was my first step going into healing. I really wanted to genuinely understand, why do I feel the same all the time, also in relation to men, and then ultimately to my inner child. And I wanna make it clear again. So the things I healed from childhood. So my father wound I focused on, were all related to my inner child from my past. That means I had a huge wounded inner child within me that didn't feel seen, that felt uncomfortable speaking my truth, that felt unworthy. I had a huge lack of unworthiness within me, and that spread it into so many areas in my life. If it was my own business, when I had my personal training, when I had friendships, and I had to look at these things. And that's where therapy came in. So this was the first step for me to get a picture of myself, of the dynamic I had within the relationship to my parents. And I was able to for the first time, I was able to have like a different point of view, to zoom myself out and to look on my childhood and to the relationship I had with my father, or the lack thereof. And I started to understand, okay, what does it mean to have an emotional connection? Was I emotionally seen? What happened there? Because the first thing I was getting aware of, I would feel a lot of shame of saying something like, I think they did not everything right. And I realized, okay, wait a minute, why would I feel that way? Why would I feel shame saying something I feel? So with therapy, there came a point where I was doing an exercise, and that exercise is also out of a workbook I have here. That's what I also created after the father wound. And in that exercise, I had to write a letter to my dad. And my therapist just said to me, just do it and you don't have to send it. But I remember at that time, my heart was racing so much just thinking about the thought that I would have to send that letter to my dad. But it was not like that. My therapist said that he just recommended, just do it. You need to get it out of your system. And the way you write that letter, it's not really about blaming and shaming and saying you did this. No, it's very structured, and it's more like this. Look, when I was 5 years old, this and that happened, and that made me feel very sad and lonely, and I had this feeling of being left alone. But instead of accusing, you asked for the perspective of your father. So I asked, how did you experience that? So that's basically what I did. No accusing, no blaming, really structured, really, plain and dry. And I knew for myself, if I really wanted to heal, if I really wanted to take ownership for my little inner girl, I would have to send that letter. I would have to send that letter. And I was so afraid. I was so afraid of my dad's reaction. I was so afraid. But I knew I had to do it for myself, no matter what the reaction would be. I knew whatever reaction I would get, listen up, that is truth, and that might be a direct reflection of how things were in my childhood. Because be aware, if one person in the relationship, even if it's with your parents, does therapy, does the inner work, goes out and seeks help, and the other person doesn't, there is a gap. There is someone that is maturing emotionally, physically, internally with their whole state of being, but the other person stays where they are. I'm not saying that people are not growing. They do, but it's a different intention. And that's what I would be aware of when I'm sending it. So I did it. And it took maybe like a month or something. And I'm going to be very vulnerable now here, because it was not what I expected. No, like the reaction I received was not what I wished for or what I wanted to be seen. It was very painful, I have to say. It was very painful because I'm not going to go too deep into it, but my father responded. It was a letter. I really wrote it with a hand and I sent it, and he answered me per email, which, I don't know, was for me very weird. And the core message I got was, it was a mix of shaming and of being like, he felt very accused, like, and he was like fighting against it. Like, why would I do therapy? My grandparents would not have it at the time. So he was comparing my situation. And that is like the first indicator where I knew, okay, he couldn't see me. He could not see me or didn't want to see me. And at that, it was so painful, but I was so glad. I was so glad I did it, because the reaction you receive from your parents when you being vulnerable, when you do things like that, when you have courage, you work on yourself, and somebody does not see that and value that's not about you. Like, that is not about you. That is about them. Their lack, their insecurity, their woundedness. But I had to learn that. I had to learn it. I thought that's what I grew up with. My parents, they're like the best. They never did anything wrong, but they're human too. And I really had to genuinely experience that with all their flaws. And that was the situation. It was very painful. It was very, very sad, but also very honest and raw. And after that, I moved on a little bit. I mean, I still had contact with my dad. We tried to kind of figure out things, and I knew, okay, this is the truth. That's what I'm getting. That's everything he got, And then I remember there was like, I kept working through these things. I kept working through my father wound. And, when I had at that time also Albert on my side, I was constantly being surrounded by a safe man, and I would feel that energy from Albert, what it meant to be emotionally seen, what it meant when I'm vulnerable, what it meant when I just couldn't do anything, I would not be judged, or when I would be very honest with my feelings. And those are all things I do have to acknowledge helped me heal even deeper, because he was a safe space. He is a safe space. And I was able to experience that on first hand, what I never had, in my childhood. So I have to acknowledge that was a huge environment and safety space where I would finally put my guard down and my inner child could heal. And I went on. I did plant medicine, I did breath work, I did other healing modalities, because I took that really seriously. I really wanted to go deeper within myself. And then I had this huge awakening process, and with that I feel like everything just was shaking up. And with the healing also comes the part of grieving. So I had to grieve the father I never had. And I had to acknowledge it's not going to change. It's not going to come back. So I was very aware. I became very aware. I had to grieve the childhood I never had. I had to grieve the father I never had. I had to let go of all the illusions that would not come back. It's over. Like, childhood is literally gone. I cannot rewire the past. And with that, there came a lot of healing, a lot of release, and it's coming in waves. It's not gonna be over. And I had to acknowledge, okay, I cannot do anything about my childhood now, but here I am. I am an adult child, and I have the possibility now to influence my relationship also with my parents. And I need to be clear on what I want. So here's the part of grieving, of speaking your truth to your parents, even if it's a conversation or a letter. Forgiveness, forgiving the past. I cannot do anything about it. I cannot stay resentful. It's over. And that was the whole process. Really deeply healing process, also on and off with conversations. And then there came a turning point for me where I started to, it kind of made click, where I felt like this whole childhood thing, it's over. Like, I felt like I could let it go and it was done. But now here I am being an adult child. I would say myself, okay, I feel like now I have this peace. I really do have this peace. And how do I know that? Because I would realize it doesn't matter if my parents would be present in my life, physically, mentally, emotionally, or not. I need to allow myself to be happy. And I need to find a way to live with or without him that makes me so full, that makes me alive, and because it's my life. So, nevertheless, here's the part: childhood, grieving, forgiveness, all the modalities you name it. And here's the part, that is me now. I'm an adult child, and I have the possibility to define my relationship also with my parents. I don't have to just say, oh, I let it happen, I don't have any influence. No. And I had to become very clear. I asked myself, what relationship do I want to have as an adult child with my father? What do I want? What do I really want and need? And I became very clear about that. And I know, like, I want a close relationship. I want emotionally connection relationship. Not that he is like caring about me all the time, but emotionally involved, caring. What are you doing? How are you? But I knew on the other side, I cannot expect that. I cannot expect that, but I have to be open and direct and say what I want. That's what I want. That's what I'm standing for. I want deep emotional connection with anyone that is close in my cycle. And I'm not, and if this can't be given by my parents, it's okay, but I don't want to engage in how is the weather and, oh, my neighbor did this. This is not me. I'm not like that. And so what I did, I gave both of my parents the possibility to, and I invited them to get to know me in a new way. I invited them and I told them, I am not a child anymore. I'm an adult child. And I really, from the bottom of my heart, wish that you would be part of my life. And that you would be interested in who I am, what I'm doing, what my heart is being moved. But all of that, it's not really happening. And I had to really acknowledge, okay, that's where they are, and I expressed what I want. That's me, that's me. I want that. I want the depth. But at the same time, they're not, or right now, not the people I can ask that for. And now with my dad, I want to be very clear. I had to make a decision because the kind of contact I had with him was absolutely devastating for my mental and emotional health. Like, the way we had contact was so devastating, and it was so exhausting for me because I could not adjust myself anymore. And what I mean with adjust is that there was no more the child within me able to copy to his level of emotional awareness or mentality. And I would be I couldn't do it anymore. So I made a decision, and that was after a huge incident 2 years ago, really where I would realize there's a boundary. There's a huge boundary because things would be projected onto me. Things would be like shamed onto me, where I said, no more. Like, no more. And I realized I mean, really, I wanted to heal, and I would have loved to take my father with me, of course, but I had to realize, like, that's not where he is, and I had to let go of that, and I had to come back to myself, and I'm very vulnerable here. I'm still on that path. I'm an adult child, and I have a dad. He is living, but he's obviously not in my life, and I do struggle with that. I do learn how to cope with that still, but I know responsibility means that I have to be clear about what I need and want, and I have to communicate it, but even if it might be your parents, I cannot expect that. I'm now an adult, and that's what I want. That's what I need, and I would love to have that, to share that with both of my parents, but I'm not fighting for that anymore. Like, it should be natural, and it should be easy. Love is easy, and if love is not easy, there are wounds, there are trauma that is just holding people back from being present, from being vulnerable. But honestly, that is not my stuff anymore. Like, I literally healed that, and I have just enough from dysfunctional communication, from silent treatment, from gaslighting, from shaming. I have enough. And all the generations that are coming after me, it literally ends with me. And it is tough, it is challenging, and it's so, sometimes it feels so weird, but at the end of the day, I know, like, this is the right thing. And so yeah, since like 2 years I have no contact to my dad, and I know that sounds, but I'm better. Like, I'm really better. I had time to recover. I had time to get emotionally stable. I mean, even that I'm talking about that now is like a huge step for me. Like it means, something has been strengthening or rooted and come back and grounded. And that is what I'm working on. Like, that is important to me, and that is what I'm preaching. That is what, we encounter. And it does not mean, I want to say that again, it does not mean that it stays like that. But right now, this is just the moment. And I also had many, many moments where I had a lot of empathy for my dad, because I knew how his childhood was. I knew how brutal things were. And at the same time, I have the invitation, or I always give the invitation, it's time to heal that. It's not really, serving us anymore. And what I mean with that, not only our, like, us, our parents or their parents, like everyone in the collective. And yeah, that is just where I am. That is how I heal. So these are the tools I was using. And for you, what I would really recommend, and that was a huge step, is working through the Father Wound workbook. I put everything in there. I work through the questions, the realizations, the differences between how to realize where is the core wound and what it actually does to you on a daily basis. I put everything in there. This is like the treasure out of the past 5 years. And this literally helps you to realize what has been going on. And I just want you to know, I know the father wound is a huge collective topic. Like, I know that it's all over, it's everywhere. And there is no shame, and there is also not that anybody it's your fault. It was always there. Like, don't believe you have the father when you're not the first one having it. The person before you had it, and the person before you, but now it's like the collective is healing. So it's not really about whose fault it is. It's just it has to heal now, so it doesn't repeat. Yes, so let me know what questions you have about the father wound, anything else you want to dig deeper into, and what are your own experience with this topic. I wish you a beautiful day, and I talk to you soon. Bye.